Thank you. I have the privilege of introducing this remarkable woman. Okay, let me get my few notes. Let's see. Okay, I'm ready. So, she has done so many things, so many things. So I'm just going to hit the highlights and going through all the fabulous things that you have done and how you have helped us so much in Texas. One of them, 2002, Debbie became our state representative for District 150, where she served for 14 years. She was instrumental in getting Jessica's Law passed, but also she had something put into our Texas Pledge and Texas State flag, one state under God. Every time we say that, we need to thank this woman. She did that while she was representing us in Austin. Thank you. She's been married to Mike for 55 years. 55 years. They have 3 very successful children and 14 grandchildren. And so they are very involved with their family. After Debbie left the state representative, she became a realtor for 18 years. Then in her spare time, she decided to become a volunteer firefighter. Then she decided to become an emergency medical technician. And then she began serving on charitable boards, raising money for charity, bringing in Moses, Charlton Heston to speak, and also Debbie Reynolds. So she has been very instrumental in promoting the nonprofits and the services for this state and this area. Then she really retired, and she got involved in one of her son's very award-winning horse farm, and decided to stay home and bake cookies for her 14 grandchildren and turn that into a business called Designer Cookies. She and Mike have made 19 trips to Israel. And from the pictures, hopefully we're going to hear maybe a little bit about that now. So I am very proud and honored to represent and to introduce Debbie Riddle.
Wow. I've got to tell you, it is awesome being here at home in Tomball. Aren't we in the best town in the world here? I mean, for real. And I've got to tell you, this picture, this was an impromptu picture. We decided to take our whole family to Israel. Now, this was about 5 months before the October 7th. Susan was with us. And Dr. Johnson was with us as well, because we wanted to thank them for getting our whole family, which is a lot of us, through COVID. And they did. And so we wanted to say thank you. So Susan's picture is right up there, standing right next to me. We are in no order, by the way, which is totally typical of our family. We were in the process of crossing the street. And there's a gentleman that always has a camera. I kind of forgot about him. And he said, hey, wait a minute, you want a picture? So we're in no order. All the kids and grandkids, they're all talking to each other and all scattered around. So we just stopped where we were, and he took the picture. And so that's how that happened. But we do love Israel. My husband is the chairman of the board for Jerusalem Seminary. And so if any of you want to learn more about Jerusalem Seminary, my husband, Mike Riddle, is over here and talk about that. We've had a rough time here in Texas because of the flood. We've had a rough time here in Texas because of the children that were lost in the flood. My friend that I went all the way from kindergarten through high school with, her brother's little granddaughter, Molly, was killed in the flood. She was one of the little girls. They did find her. And so I thought, to tell you the truth, I thought, what can I talk about today? And I thought that stronger than the storm. Stronger than the storm. But then you know what? The storm hit. And the storm was horrible. And then I pulled back and I thought, I can't talk about stronger than the storm because of the devastation that's going on here in our own state. But then I thought, no, we need to talk about being stronger than the storm. Over here, and I didn't make enough. I'm sorry. I had a wedding, cookies to do for a wedding, so I kind of ran out of time. But there was some cookies over there. I've got a lighthouse. It's a cookie jar. And so there are some cookies that look like flowers. And I thought that that was really appropriate because we all like flowers. I'm going to come down here. I far prefer it down here. And we all like flowers, but we use flowers for anniversaries. We use flowers for birthdays. We use flowers for funerals. So I did flowers. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a lighthouse, some lighthouse cookies. And a cookie that's a lighthouse in the middle of the day. And then I did some cookies of the lighthouse in a storm, and that's where we are now. And I kind of liken it that our Lord God, Jesus, is our lighthouse. And that lighthouse stands strong and firm and is there, whether it's a good day or whether it's a bad day. But let me tell you, if you're in a storm, let me walk over here and see if I've got one I can kind of show y'all. Here's a good day. And y'all can kind of pass it around and look at it. I wish I had enough for everybody. Next time I'm going to come and I'm going to bring enough for everybody. But pass it around. And you can see that that lighthouse has got to be there. Good times, bad times. But if you're in a storm and you don't know where to go, that lighthouse. And that is what we have with our Lord. That is what we have with our Jesus, is the lighthouse. But you know what? That's also what we have with each other. Because has anybody in here gone through life and never had a storm? I don't know, am I the only one? Storms are kind of common. So it looks like just about everybody here has experienced a storm in their life. And we need that lighthouse. And we need that lighthouse to guide us. And we need that lighthouse, which is our Lord God. We need that lighthouse, which is Jesus. And it's not always easy. I hurt for my friend Nancy because in their family, their baby girl, little Molly, is no longer with them. That's a storm. And we're all experiencing that storm here in Texas. It was just really strange. But that's not the only storm that we encounter. And God, and Mike, don't forget to time me now. Otherwise, we might be here all day. I get carried away. But I got to tell you, in the legislature, when I served in the legislature, it's not always easy there either. Because in the legislature, let me tell you, we get these great big giant bills, And they're filled with good stuff. They're like life. They're filled with good stuff, and they're filled with bad stuff. And I got to tell you, if you vote for it because the good stuff, well, you get praised for that and criticized by others. But if the bad stuff is really bad and you vote against it, then you get criticized for that too. Now, forgive me, but my daddy used to say, sometimes in life you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Do y'all understand that? So here in Tomball, I am so thankful and I am so proud of being in Tomball. And the folks here in Tomball, when we've hit our storms, the folks in Tomball. But sometimes we have horses, sometimes you gotta grab that horse by the reins and you gotta pull it down. And I'm gonna share with you briefly one of my storms, Mayor, that I know, when you serve in public office, tell me, is it easy? This morning for an hour it was. Serving in public office is not easy, but you know what prepared me for the storms in life? And I'm just going to share a little personal story here. I was a little red-headed girl in Oak Forest. And my first day of junior high was a big day. It was FM Black Junior High. I was 12 years old. My entire face was paralyzed. I had Bell's palsy. I could not even say my own name. I had to blink my eyes. It was paralyzed on both sides. Now, back then, they really didn't know what Bell's palsy was. But my daddy, a Marine, wasn't ready to give up, and he took me to a doctor. And let me tell you, we had to eat a lot of beans and cornbread. We didn't have a lot of money. And so every time we went to the doctor, which was a lot, it was beans and cornbread. But my first day of junior high, my mother cried because she did not want me to go to school because she knew the kids would be cruel. She knew the kids would be. And you know what? I could look in a mirror. I was ugly. I knew, And nobody had to tell me that. I knew it. Matter of fact, you know you're ugly when you bring your school pictures home and your mother bursts into tears and sends them back. Yeah, you kind of get the message then. But my first day of junior high, and there was a lot of us. I'm a baby boomer. I was never in a class with less than 36 kids in a class. We thought that was normal. My last name was Young, so I was at the back of a single file line. And our teacher, Ms. Buell, said, everybody needs to stand up one at a time, and you need to say your name. These, for me, were totally impossible. Actually, my face, it was totally paralyzed. So I sat there and I thought, if I think hard enough, if I can just think hard enough, I can say my name. And so when it got all the way to the back of the line where I was, I stood up with the confidence that I could say my name. And you know what? I couldn't. So the teacher called me up to the front. Now, did that make things better? No. Ugly little redheaded girl, can't say her name, be called up to the front. But at that time, I can tell you, I remember it as yesterday. God just covered me. He just covered me with his love and what my grandmother used to call grit. And I just dug my heels in. And I gave myself a deadline of 3 o'clock that day. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to communicate and talk like everybody else. I had to come up with a different way of talking because, quite frankly, for me, not talking wasn't an option, Leo. And so I remember sitting in class after class. Back then we had windows, and I was looking out the window, and then suddenly it hit me. Ventriloquists can talk without moving their lips. My face didn't move anyway. So I ran home when that 3 o'clock bell rang, and Susan, I hit that door. I couldn't say, Mama, take me to the library. I couldn't talk, remember? So I wrote it down. And she said, oh, I will. And I said, no, now. So she put me in the car. She took me up 43rd Street. I went in and I checked out every book on ventriloquism. They had 4. How am I doing time-wise, Mike? Okay. And so there were 4 books, and I followed the 4 books, but one of them is the same book. Just kind of as a little note here, it's the same book Jeff Dunham used as a kid to learn how to talk like a ventriloquist. His parents bought him a dummy. My parents couldn't afford that. I didn't even ask for that. So you know what I did? Now, y'all don't think I'm crazy or report me to the police or something. But back then, we had what was called a little 3-year-old doll, about the size, Lori, of a little 3-year-old. Mine wasn't a Chatty Cathy, but it was about that big. You're right. And so I followed the directions in the book that didn't say decapitate a doll, but that was the only thing I could do. So I got my mama's knife, and I cut her head off, and I decapitated my doll. My parents were worried about it. My parents got really concerned, and then I cut her back out. I had my mama blow up a balloon because I obviously couldn't do it, and I made paper mache, and I was artistic, so I played with paper mache all the time. So I made a lot of paper mache, and I used the balloon and yeah, her head looked like a balloon, but I thought she was gorgeous. And I gave her red hair because I had red hair. Her eyes were kind of bulgy. I didn't know how to quite do the eyes. I followed the instructions, so I cut them out. I needed a head stick, so my mama had a broom, and so I got my daddy's saw, and I cut the top off of my mama's broom, about that much of it. So mama had to sweep like this. And then I needed some little rings, some little plastic rings to run my daddy's fishing line through. So I put in the little eye screws, and I made her mouth, and then did all of that. And then the hole that I cut in the back of my doll, where I decapitated my doll, I then had actually a homemade dummy. That was my only friend. I named her Lulabelle. I could say L's, but B's were hard. So I forced myself to practice, and that practice helped me. Now, ultimately, and I got to tell you, it's sort of fun. Had the tragedy not happened here earlier, here in Texas with the flood and all that, I was actually going to bring one of my puppets and show you, but I thought that might not work because we've got so much tragedy going on. But the point is, I made Lulabelle talk. I made her work. I followed the directions. And it's really not hard to be a ventriloquist if your face is paralyzed. And it came in real handy in the legislature. You know, it really did. Mr. Speaker, I have no idea why my desk mate said that. So, yeah, and I had quite a few puppets actually by then. I actually had members of the House that would come up to my office and have conversations with my puppets. We didn't tell anybody. I was worried about their reputations, but but it was a lot of fun. So, you know, the old saying, turn lemon into lemonade. That works sometimes. It works when you're a little girl with a paralyzed face. It works when you're a little girl with a paralyzed face that can't even say your own name. It works with a little girl that is able to take her doll and decapitate it and do all kinds of strange things like that to make a dummy. But there's other things in life that are a lot more difficult. And it takes God. It takes our Lord. It takes our Jesus. When we don't understand why these babies have died in the flood. We don't have an explanation for that. I can't take a ventriloquist doll and make it go away. But what we can do is we can dig our heels in. And ladies, if you wear the high heels, the real high heels, then just dig those heels in even deeper and say, we're not going to let Satan take away our joy. We're not going to let Satan take away our faith. We're not going to let Satan take away who we are as Texans. And if you're a transplanted Texan, you're every bit as good as those of us that were born here. Because Texas, did you know that Texas is the only state that we can fly our flag at the same level as our American flag? That's because we were an independent nation. And in all reality, I think we still have a lot of that independent nation coursing through our body, coursing through our blood. That's a lot of who we are. It's kind of everything of who we are. But today, I really thank you for having me. I want to thank my husband for being here. I got to tell you, he's had to put up with a whole lot well over half a century. And we are so blessed with this family of ours. We are so grateful and we are so thankful for all those kids, all those grandkids. And we have 2 in the military. One is in the Marines, one is in the Navy. They could not be there. Another one couldn't be there because he was also in training. But we live in the best town, in the best state, in the best country. God has blessed us greatly. And I thank you very much for allowing me to be with you today, especially on a day where we are all grieving. And right now, if you look at the cookies over there, there's a few left. Take what you want. You're going to find one with flowers, as I told you, because flowers are important. We need to not forget flowers. But there's one of the lighthouse on a pretty day, because God is there for us on those pretty days. But there's a lighthouse there in the storm, and that's what gets us to the storm. God bless you, and God bless Texas. Thank you. Oh, he said, I got to answer questions. Do we have time for a few questions? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? How to make cookies, how to pass laws? Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am. There's 2 over here. Yes, ma'am. Well, I used my ventriloquism to occupy myself, and I used that to communicate. That's the only way I could communicate.
Can you show it? I mean, I know you don't have a doll, but can you just...
That's hard to do without a dummy. I should have brought one. Maybe the next meeting I'll bring one. I have Henrietta Henfeather. And Henrietta Henfeather, I'll bring to the next meeting. I'm not going to be the speaker, but I'll bring Henrietta Henfeather anyway. Henrietta Henfeather, she's a character. She's a problem. You know, Henrietta Henfeather is the president of the Chickens Republican Women's Club and her chicken coop. They don't always get along, but they do vote right. So, yes, ma'am.
God, you put God when you was in politics. You put God in the pledge.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you how that happened, and this is going to be a real confession here. I'm a native Texan. I was born in downtown Houston, right across from City Hall. And every time I had to say the Texas Pledge, which was a lot, I didn't even tell my husband. I didn't like it. There was something wrong with it, but I didn't know what it was. But I was too ashamed to tell anybody because I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't like the Texas Pledge. But God has a timing. So I was down at the party headquarters. Yes, I am a Republican. And I was down there, and they had a meeting, and they asked me to say the Texas Pledge. It's like, darn. And so I did. And when I got in my car, suddenly it hit. And I think God just allowed that delay until the timing was right. And it hit me that when we say our Pledge of Allegiance to our national flag, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. My father was in the Marines. He fought on Iwo Jima, and he actually saw there were actually two flags that went up on Suribachi. So the respect for the flag was major in my life. But it hit me that we do not acknowledge God in our Texas Pledge. So though it was against the law, I picked up my cell phone and I called my chief of staff. And I said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to change the Texas Pledge, and we're going to put under God somewhere in that Texas Pledge, because as Texans, we are going to acknowledge God, and we're going to make it replicate our national pledge. Right now, God isn't in there. We're going to put him in there. And I realized that's why God allowed that to irritate me. And when the timing was right. Now, kind of the backstory that doesn't get told. It went through committee, went through that committee, came out, went through calendars, and then it came onto the floor of the House. And let me tell you, I got some complaints about it, and I ignored them. And so I'm going to let you be at the back mic, and I'm at the front mic. And that's how, when you present a bill, and if someone's at the back mic and has questions, the speaker said, Representative, would you take a question? And this is on that bill. I said, yes, sir. Well, the gentleman at the back, not you, but the gentleman at the back, some days he was an atheist, some days he was an agnostic, some days he was a Buddhist. We never knew what he was day by day. And he was at that back mic. I'm not smart enough to know these words. I think God put it in my head. Sometimes I can be a smart ass, but don't tell anybody. So he said, Representative, exactly which God are you referring to in this bill? I knew the ACLU would come after me if I started giving them real answers. So you have to be wise as a serpent, but meek as a dove. I have a hard time with the meek stuff, okay? But anyway, I think the Lord put in my head, and I said, Representative, behind me on this dais is an American flag. And on the speaker's dais, there was a Texas flag and an American flag, right like up here. And I said, Representative, Right behind me on this dais is an American flag. Tell me, have you ever placed your hand over your heart, and have you ever recited the pledge to our American flag? And he said, well, yes, of course. And I said, then you tell me, which God were you referring to? With that, he got his feathers all in a ruffle, and he stomped away, and he went back to his desk. And I said, move passage, Mr. Speaker, and the board lit up green. And that is the story. I don't want to go over time. Is there? Okay. Is there another question? Don't be shy. I'll take anything. One question I usually get, are you afraid to go to Israel? Absolutely not.
You went through a lot of storms, it's like you said, even as a child. So I just wondered, did you have your faith instilled with you and the Christian families when you were just very young, or did you come to that relationship with the Lord later on? I was just wondering, when did you really engage with him and get that sustenance from him?
Well, I've got to tell you, I grew up in the Church of Christ, and even as a kid, I didn't fit in real well. You know, I'd get in a theological discussion with my Sunday school teacher in the 3rd grade. And when my dog died, I was crying, and I told her that my dog went to heaven, and she went into an explanation that dogs don't go to heaven. And though she scurried to my daddy to tell me that I was, theologically off base. My father, who was a Marine, I don't know exactly what he said, but I don't think she went back to talk to him anymore. So the answer to that is yes. I would talk to God as a little girl like I would be talking to my friend. I would carry on conversations. Did I hear God audibly? No, but I would talk to God a lot. I did. I had a lot of questions. In the Church of Christ, we didn't have instrumental music, but David played a harp. I was constantly asking about that. I irritated people because I was asking kind of tough, hard questions, I guess. I didn't think they were tough. I thought they were just normal. But yes, I grew up in a family. My parents divorced. My parents divorced when I was 16. That was very, very difficult. We went through a lot of financial difficulty, and that was very hard. There was a period of time when I just thought, okay, I'm kind of done with this. I didn't do anything, I was an art major, so I did paint a nude. I'm going to tell y'all that. I don't think God was real happy with that. But I threw that one away. Anyway, y'all are getting to know way too much about me here. My relationship with God has always been my faith. One last story about the faith, and it's very real. I'm going to tell you word for word. My face became paralyzed again when I was an adult on one side. My husband had just left Southwestern University as their attorney and started his own law practice. And we didn't have any insurance. And my husband was scared. It was half of my face, but it was still paralyzed. I was a mess. And he wanted to take me to doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor. It's like, I've gone through this. Dr. Fred Guilford's clinic is the best in the world. He might have died, but you know what? Everybody there, I'm confident in that. It's my head, it's my face, and the Lord provided the money in a very miraculous way for that surgery. Since we didn't have insurance, there was a little gap there. But my husband was making me crazy. He was saying, honey, we need to go to this doctor, and then we need to go to that doctor, and then there's a doctor over here we might want to go to. But he had a client, in California. And Mike had to fly out to California. And that legal fee would pretty much take care of getting me in the hospital for the intracranial surgery that I need. Let me tell you, it's no fun having your head opened. But there's a little bony canal and that nerve goes through, and so they got to get in there and, you know, crack your head open. And I talked to God. I don't call it prayer, really. I just talked to God. And I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I've gone through this before. I know what's ahead of me. I can get through this. You don't need to spend your time on me. Mike is the problem. So I think you need to spend your valuable time on my husband because he's scared. And you need to give him confidence that this doctor and this surgery is going to be okay. I've been there, done that. I know what I'm headed for. Don't waste your time. I'm ashamed to tell you this. Don't waste your time on me, Lord. He's the one you need to mess with. He's the one. And so when Mike got on the airplane to come home, he was still scared. So he sat down next to a man, and you know how you men do. When y'all sit next to somebody on the plane, y'all start talking, and the first thing y'all ask is, what do you do? Because you men are always interested in what y'all do. What do you do for a living? Do you play golf? What do you do? So he asked Mike, what do you do? And Mike said, I'm a lawyer. Mike said, what do you do? And he said, I'm a doctor. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. Mike said, really? My wife is about to go into surgery as soon as I get back home for nerve decompression in her head because she's got Bell's palsy. And he said, who's the doctor? And Mike told him. He said, she's got the best in the nation. She's got the best in the world. You've got the best. God answered that prayer. And so he came home. And he left me alone after that about going to see all these doctors. I was thankful to God, too. So please keep our fellow Texans in your prayers daily. Please. Oh, one more question. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to see you smile again. One of the goofiest, silliest sportscasters in the history of Houston is Dan Patrick. Do you have any Dan Patrick stories?
Yeah, I know about when he got his vasectomy. Everybody knew about his vasectomy. He did it on the air, for crying out loud. Did you know that? Yeah, he did. So, yeah, Dan and I are good friends. Sometimes we've had our differences, we disagree. But then again, sometimes my husband and I disagree. I thought having his vasectomy on the air was a little stupid. But he thought it was cool, and I think it helped the ratings, you know. Do you want any more information about Dan Patrick? I think so. Well, listen, I think I've covered about all the territory. I think I've gotten in enough trouble I better get into for right now. But I love Tomball. I love all of you. I especially love that man over there, my husband, and our family. And God bless you. God bless Texas. And keep our fellow Texans in your daily prayers. Pray, talk to God about that. because we've got a big mess ahead of us. I love you. I love Tomball. God bless you. Thank you.